In fact, my point to highlight, it was 2 days ago while I was praying for this live. I had a thought that I would like to share with you. Actually, I was thinking about Daniel and Joseph. Daniel and Joseph, they are two people who interpreted the rules extremely well. An incredible story, but and they experienced something special. Something special. And I want to read you 2 verses. The first verse is about Joseph. It's exactly the same scene. Look, in Genesis talks from 41 verse 8. It's the Pharaoh speaking, and he says, "In the morning, Pharaoh, troubled, summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt and told them his dreams, but none of them could interpret them for him." And Daniel experienced the same thing. It is written in Daniel chapter 4, verses 3-5. We talk about King Nebuchadnezzar, who says, "Then I ordered all the wise men of Babylon to be brought before me so that they could give me the interpretation of my dream. The magicians, the enchanters, the astrologers, and the diviners came. I told them the dream, but they could not give me its interpretation. In the end, Daniel was presented before me, also named Belshazzar, after the name of my God. The spirit of the holy gods resides in him. I told him my dream." In fact, what is interesting in this passage is that they are also known. They are known for interpreting dreams, Joseph and Daniel. But around them, there were magicians, there were astrologers, there were diviners, all right, who interpreted the king's dreams. Whether it was the Pharaoh, whether it was King Nebuchadnezzar, they were there to interpret the dreams. And it was a custom at the time. When we look at history, we realize that all kings had magicians because dreams were taken very seriously at the time. You should know that it wasn't planned, but actually, when I studied, I looked a bit into history, there were even kings who, when they needed advice, would sleep in the temples of their false gods, spending the night there hoping that their false god would give them a dream. So there was like a culture of dreams that was present. And even though they were false gods, there was this notion where they took dreams seriously. But what happens in this passage is that when God gives a dream to Pharaoh and to Nebuchadnezzar, the Magias, the magicians, the soothsayers, are unable this time to provide the interpretation of the dream. And I find that relevant. In fact, it's incredible to think that these mages couldn't interpret it because it was the Spirit of God who was giving it. Even if they could do it for other dreams that perhaps came from the king or perhaps from the enemy. But when it was God speaking, all these wise men could not interpret the dreams. And only the Spirit of God that is in you, that is in me, can interpret a dream that comes from God. And the voice of God for the one who receives the dream from God is the Holy Spirit in you. So I would like to encourage you and tell you that there are people around you, whether they are believers or non-believers, who will have dreams, and they may search on Google, consult all sorts of New Age practices or all sorts of things because they are not believers or even believers who will pray. But it is the Spirit of God within you that can interpret a dream that comes from God. Only the Spirit of God knows the depths of God. And when God gives a dream, the Spirit of God can interpret it, okay? And I found that interesting, where I say to myself, it's interesting. So I would just like to add a caveat to what I'm saying, because there are some dreams whose symbolism is simple that come from God, and even non-believers can understand them. I refer you to the book of Judges, where there is a Midianite who has a dream, and there is his friend next to him who gives him the interpretation of the dream, even though they are not believers, even though they are not part of the people of Israel. And in fact, it is even God who asks Gideon, go listen to what is happening. And so the dream of the Midianite and the one who interprets the dream, they are not of the people of God. But the symbolism was simple, you see. So There are symbols that are simple, that people can understand, that everyone can understand. But there comes a time when God begins to really speak deeply to people. Only we, as children of God, can interpret the dreams. So it is our duty to be sensitive to this. It's certain that this is not an easy subject. We're not at the coffee machine saying, "So, what dream did you have last night before starting work? A little coffee, let's talk about dreams." It's certain that this isn't necessarily the topic we bring up at the coffee machine at work. But I encourage us to be open to this and to already talk about it with people who are believers, to open up this space as I am doing with you. And you will see that people will talk, you will see that, and I believe and I pray that the Holy Spirit inspires you, and I am putting documents in place to help you grow in this. And I know that the Holy Spirit will work through you. And even if we don't go into the details of the dream, if we just mention the main points of the dream and provide the overall interpretation without going into details, it is already a blessing for people. Okay,